Onto this now. One South Africa movement has launched a campaign to find 100 independent candidates for parliament in the lead up to the 2024 general elections. Yesterday marked 2 years since the Constitutional Court ruled that those elections must be held under a new system which allows for independent candidates to also run for National Assembly and provincial legislatures. The court has now given Parliament a 6-month extension to make the necessary changes. So how could this complicate the road to 2024, as it were? Let's speak to One South Africa movement spokesperson, Mudzuli Rakhivhane, who joins us now via our video link to also discuss the launch of this campaign. And it's lovely to have you on the program. Thank you so much for making time. Let me begin by just getting the organization's reaction to the Constitutional Court's decision to grant the 6-month extension, especially because One South Africa movement is among the voices that were calling for changes to be made to the Electoral Act to allow for independent candidates.
Well, it is disappointing that Parliament even had to apply for an extension, and the fact that they left the application for the extension so late, giving basically the court a month to decide on this, and basically forcing the court's hand, because what else was the court supposed to do but grant them an extension?
Yeah, that's it, right? I mean, if Parliament says they're unprepared, they're not ready, they aren't in a position to necessarily make changes to this act, you can't actually find a way around it, even if it actually puts the IEC in a very tight corner, because they'll have less time to prepare for an election, essentially, that we've never held in this country before.
Exactly, and the IEC has already come out on affidavit to say that these are the timelines that we can work with in order to facilitate the different options of a new system. And so I'm not sure that Parliament has a keen awareness of the fact that them being tardy at the beginning of the process, and I use that word intentionally because the minister only applied or rather appointed a ministerial advisory committee 8 months after the Constitutional Court's hearing came out. So as a public, we need to be asking ourselves, where would we have been had they actually just started this process when they were supposed to, knowing the complexities and how many other laws would have to be changed and how many other agencies would be implicated in order to host an election in 2020.
I wonder, out of interest, how much involvement, if any, One South Africa movement has in this process of reimagining essentially the Electoral Act.
Yeah, we've been quite proactive. We, number one, had assisted in drafting an entire bill to present to Parliament so that they wouldn't be starting from scratch. And unfortunately, for unjustifiable reasons, Parliament decided not to use that bill and rather wait almost a year and a half to present a whole new bill, which is actually wholly unworkable. Also, we have made oral submissions, we've made written submissions, we attend every single parliamentary committee meeting that there is. So our day-to-day is actually trying our best to facilitate a process where we can assist Parliament so that they can get this job done quicker and also come up with a bill that makes sense and that's workable for independent candidates.
Yeah, when you say Parliament's bill is unworkable, what exactly do you mean? Are you able to give us examples of some of the things that are contained there?
Sure. So one of the key issues is that they have decided that independent candidates can only contest for 200 seats out of the 400 seats. And if that raises an alarm, it should. But the implications are not just that it's unfair that independent candidates can't contest for all 400 seats. The mathematical implication is severe here. What that model does, it actually means that independent candidates almost have to get double the amount of votes that, for example, a small party would need to get 1 seat in Parliament, which again tells you that this bill is basically making it as hard as possible for independent candidates to become new entrants into the system.
That hasn't stopped the organization, nonetheless, for forging ahead. We're trying to find, I believe, 100 independent candidates who I think you would endorse essentially in the lead up to 2024. Speak to us about this campaign and, more importantly, how you're vetting the people who are showing an interest in being part of this campaign.
Yeah, and I think the point that you make is really important to say that independent candidacy is not just for independent candidacy's sake. One of the key things that this model does is that it introduces new entrants into Parliament. And the point of new entrants is to say we need to get more women into Parliament, more young people into Parliament, more people who've been involved in business, people who've been professionals, people that are experts in the fields that are crying out for people who have really good expertise but are also known to be honest, and people that have already been serving their communities. So that is the broad criteria that we're using to find 100 new talented South Africans who maybe haven't been tainted by the political system yet, but who are willing to come in and serve as MPs and as members of provincial legislatures.
And how would this work once they're elected into the National Assembly, assuming that they're successful, of course, even after the 2024 elections? Because what we're seeing at the moment is, of course, people who are in the National Assembly, because of an affiliation to some kind of political party, have to toe the party line when it comes to any vote, really, that takes place. Would that be the expectation even with these independent candidates if they come through your initiative?
No. So the whole purpose of our model and even the vehicle that we're creating to facilitate this is that we want, an ideal goal for us would be that we break South Africa into constituencies and then people would directly elect their MPs in their constituency to vote for them. So at the end of the day, there's no middleman between you and your constituency. The people that voted for you, those are the people that you need to consult on the votes that you make, the decisions that you make, the laws that you're amending. So essentially, we are cutting out the middleman and creating a system whereby people who are elected are directly accountable not to political parties or party lines or even party factions, but rather they're accountable to the people who literally directly elected them to that seat.
How are you faring with finding those 100 people? Is there still space?
I'm sorry, pardon, I missed that question.
I was just trying to get a sense of how far you are in reaching that target of finding 100 candidates as things stand. Are you spoiled for choice or struggling to fill those vacancies?
No, we 100% believe that there are more than enough talented South Africans out there who just need the right kind of people around them to support them, give them the financial, emotional, even like educational tools to do this. So we don't believe that we're going to struggle. And as you would see, we literally just launched this campaign yesterday. So I'll also just take this opportunity to make an all call to South Africans that it might be you sitting at home right now, it might be someone you know, that again, they're exceptionally bright, they have a passion for this country, they're honest, they have a vision of what they want to do in order to change the communities around them. If that is you or you know someone, take the opportunity to make an application, contact us, and you could be one of the new MPs in this country by 2020.
All right, there goes your ad. Speak to us about the financial backing that you would give to any person who you feel is eligible to be part of this campaign, because we do know running for an election in this country isn't cheap.
Exactly. And I'm also going to take an opportunity to speak to one of the other issues in the bill which comes to the financial aspect. So a lot of political parties are using this opportunity, we believe, to try and shut out independents, because they're saying that independent candidates should be held to the same financial burden that political parties who've been in existence for decades, who have huge machines behind them and financially backing them. So one of the calls that we're making in the bill is to say that there has to be exceptions made where, for example, an independent candidate is able to get 10,000 signatures to show that they have support, but maybe they aren't able to raise 100 or 500,000 rand to give as a deposit to the IEC. The IEC should, in those circumstances, be able to look at that independent candidate and say, well, maybe you don't have 500,000 now, but you're able to raise 300,000, we can make an exception. And that becomes extremely important, because you'd imagine that the kinds of people that have financial burden with no exception would shut out of the process is people who've been historically disadvantaged, and in our country it would severely impact specifically Black women. So that is an important call that we're making. But to our financial model, like we did in the local government elections, we were essentially able to raise money and assist different campaigns that we help civic organizations as a proof of concept to help them not only just give them money, but to help them find ways to raise money, to connect them to people who would be able to fund their campaigns. And more so, we want to create a model in this country where it's not people giving 500 million to this specific candidate or 2 million over here. We want South Africans to be able to pledge 50 Rand on a monthly basis to support them, their candidates who are ultimately going to be representing them in Parliament.
Interesting propositions. Thanks for speaking to us. Appreciate your time on Newsfeed AM. Mudzuli Rakhivhane is a spokesperson for One South Africa Movement. Once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.